James Jackson made it clear he hates black people, pleading guilty to killing 66-year-old Timothy Kaufman of Queens. Jackson says he randomly attacked Kaufman, viciously stabbing him to death with this 2-foot sword because he says he wanted to, quote, inspire white men to kill black men, to scare black men, and to provoke a race war.
It's well over 10 years that he has been harboring these feelings of hate towards male blacks.
Back in March of 2017, Jackson traveled from Baltimore, Maryland to New York City on a murder mission.
He boarded a bus with a sword. He didn't come to New York for work. He didn't come for family. He came to kill black men. And on March 20th, 2017, he succeeded. James Harris Jackson traveled from Baltimore to New York City with a singular purpose: to carry out a racially motivated killing designed to send a message. He carried multiple weapons, including a 26-inch Roman-style sword. He chose New York because he believed it was the media capital of the world. This was not a spontaneous attack. It was premeditated racial terror. The man he chose was 66-year-old Timothy Kaufman. Timothy wasn't in a gang. He wasn't in a dispute. He wasn't threatening anyone. He was collecting recyclables on a Manhattan street. But to a man radicalized by white supremacist ideology, Timothy wasn't seen as a person. He was reduced to a symbol, a target, a message. And what makes this case even more disturbing is this: the killer didn't snap. He planned it. He traveled across state lines. He wrote about it. He walked the streets of New York for days searching for what he called the right victim. This wasn't chaos. It was ideological violence. In this episode of Dark Trace Crime Cases, we examine the life Timothy Kaufman actually lived beyond the headlines, the extremist beliefs that fueled his killer, the precise timeline of March 20th, 2017, the confession that followed, and how this case became one of New York's rare terrorism prosecutions. Welcome to Dark Trace Crime Cases, where we examine not only what happened, but how it happened. If stories like this matter to you, support the channel so more people hear them. Timothy Sidney Kaufman was born around 1950 or 1951 in New York City. He grew up in the South Jamaica houses in Queens, a public housing development shaped by both hardship and strong community ties. As a young man in Queens, Timothy earned the nickname Hard Rock. He was a skilled boxer, strong, determined, known for standing up for himself and others. That nickname would follow him for years. But Timothy wasn't defined by toughness alone. He pursued higher education, earning an associate degree while attending college in Brooklyn and Staten Island. He later worked in social services, including managing a division of a neighborhood youth corps, a federal anti-poverty program designed to help young people gain employment and direction. He helped others find opportunity. He booked a concert for the band Earth, Wind, and Fire early in their rise. He was active, engaged, curious. Over time, Timothy's life became more modest. For nearly 2 decades, he lived at the Barber Hotel in Hell's Kitchen, a residence that housed many individuals transitioning from homelessness. But Timothy was not in a program. He was a permanent tenant. He lived quietly. He collected bottles and cans to recycle, a common way for people in New York to earn extra income. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't comfortable. But it was honest. He was known to sit in diners talking about religion, philosophy, and civic life. He collected celebrity autographs. He posted photos online. His Twitter bio described him as an autograph collector. On Election Day 2016, he posted a selfie with a simple caption: "I love America." He had no spouse, no children. His closest ties were extended family, nieces, nephews, cousins, and the church community connected to his father's legacy. Those who knew him described him as kind, thoughtful, engaged. He was not invisible. But on March 20th, 2017, one man decided he would be reduced to a symbol. And that decision had been building for years. James Harris Jackson was 28 years old. He grew up near Baltimore, Maryland. His upbringing did not reflect the ideology he would later embrace. In fact, members of his own family supported racial integration. But somewhere along the way, Jackson developed extremist beliefs. He enlisted in the U.S. Army and served from 2009 to 2012, including a deployment to Afghanistan. After returning to civilian life, he struggled. And over time, he gravitated toward white supremacist ideology. According to investigations and his own admissions, Jackson harbored hatred toward black men, particularly those in interracial relationships with white women. He believed killing black men would discourage those relationships. He described himself as a race soldier. He wrote about a so-called racial world war. This wasn't casual prejudice. It was fixation. He consumed extremist content online. He absorbed propaganda. He wrote his own manifesto declaring a campaign against black people. By March 2017, that ideology had moved from words to planning. On March 17, 2017, Jackson boarded a bus from Baltimore to New York City. He chose New York deliberately. Why? Because it is the media capital of the world. He wanted attention. He checked into a hotel near Times Square. He purchased an 18-inch Roman-style steel sword online. He carried additional knives. He brought gloves and other items. For days, he walked Midtown Manhattan. He scouted. He followed potential targets. At least once, he considered attacking someone, but stopped because witnesses were present. He debated leaving the city. But he stayed. He wanted visibility. He wanted spectacle. He wanted his act to send a message. What do you think is more dangerous, one extremist individual, or an online environment that quietly feeds radicalization without interruption? Let me know in the comments. By March 20th, the search was over. He had found someone alone. It was late. Around 11:15 p.m. Hell's Kitchen, Manhattan. West 36th Street near 9th Avenue. Timothy Kaufman was outside collecting recyclable cans and bottles, something he often did at night. He was alone. James Harris Jackson approached him from behind. He was carrying the sword under his coat. Without provocation, he attacked. He plunged the blade into Timothy's back and chest. The weapon pierced vital organs, including his spleen, colon, pancreas, diaphragm, and lung. This was not a warning strike. It was an attempt to kill. Despite the severity of his injuries, Timothy did not collapse immediately. He fought back. The man known as Hard Rock still had strength. Bleeding heavily, he managed to walk more than a block toward the Midtown South Police Precinct. He made it to the front desk. And then he collapsed. Officers called for emergency medical help. He was transported to Bellevue Hospital. Despite efforts to save him, Timothy Kaufman died from his injuries. He was 66 years old. Meanwhile, Jackson did not immediately flee the city. After the stabbing, he discarded the sword. He went toward Times Square. He later admitted he intended to continue attacking black men. But he did not carry out another assault. 2 days later, on March 22, 2017, Jackson walked into an NYPD police substation in Times Square. He told officers, "You need to arrest me. I have knives in my pocket." He confessed. He admitted he came to New York to kill black men. He admitted Timothy was chosen because he was black. He admitted he wanted media attention. He even offered to demonstrate how he carried out the stabbing. There was no confusion about motive. This was racial hatred made physical.
A white supremacist has admitted to fatally stabbing a homeless man to death because he was black. He turned himself in and completely confessed not only to the murder, but confessed that he is a white supremacist. James Jackson allegedly told investigators he traveled from Maryland and was looking to harm black men when he encountered Timothy Kaufman at around 11:15 p.m. Monday in Manhattan.
I view this as a domestic terrorist attack on the African American community, and beyond that, really an attack on the modern interracial mixing. When I killed that guy, I didn't get like a rush of, I thought I was just gonna go into like a berserker madman Viking, just start hacking people apart. It just didn't happen. I was kind of shocked.
Prosecutors did not treat this as an ordinary homicide. Within days, Manhattan District Attorney Cyrus Vance Jr. announced charges that signaled something far more serious. James Harris Jackson was charged with murder in the first degree as an act of terrorism, murder in the second degree as an act of terrorism, murder as a hate crime, criminal possession of a weapon. That first charge mattered. Under New York law, terrorism is not simply about violence. It requires intent, the intent to intimidate or coerce a civilian population. Prosecutors argued that Jackson's own words proved that intent. In handwritten notes recovered after his arrest, Jackson stated that he traveled to New York specifically to kill black men. He did not target Timothy Kaufman because of a personal dispute. He did not act during a spontaneous altercation. He selected a city. He selected a demographic. He selected a weapon designed to inflict catastrophic injury. And he carried out the attack to send a racial message that met the threshold for terrorism under New York law. The hate crime charge reinforced it. The killing was motivated by racial bias. This was not random violence. It was ideological violence. In January 2019, nearly 2 years after the killing, Jackson pleaded guilty. There was no trial, no prolonged courtroom battle. By pleading guilty, he admitted to the terrorism charge and the hate crime designation. The plea ensured the maximum sentence without requiring Timothy's family to relive every detail before a jury. On February 13, 2019, he stood in a Manhattan courtroom for sentencing. The outcome was definitive. Life in prison without the possibility of parole. The harshest penalty available under New York state law. He will die in prison. During sentencing, Jackson expressed remorse. But remorse, delivered after conviction, did not undo premeditation. It did not erase the bus ride he took into Manhattan with a sword. It did not erase the deliberate search for a black male victim. And it did not return Timothy Kaufman to his family. The legal system imposed its maximum punishment. But punishment is not prevention. And that is where the deeper questions begin. This case forced New York to apply its terrorism statute to domestic racial extremism. It raised uncomfortable questions. Why do some acts of ideological violence dominate national headlines for weeks, while others fade more quickly? Why does terrorism sometimes receive uneven attention depending on the identity of the perpetrator and the victim? And how does online radicalization evolve into real-world violence? Jackson's own writings showed a progression: exposure to extremist ideology, isolation, obsession, then action. The internet did not create the hatred, but it amplified it. And in this case, amplification ended in murder.
Family and friends of Timothy Kaufman say they find little comfort knowing the man who killed him 2 years ago will never be a free man.
It's justice, and it ain't justice. He got life in prison, but Timothy is gone, and we'll never see him again.
A judge sentenced James Jackson to life in prison without parole. The 30-year-old Baltimore, Maryland man pleaded guilty to viciously stabbing Kaufman to death in Midtown with this 2-foot sword, simply because he is black. Jackson told investigators he wanted to inspire white men to kill black men. Prosecutors shared passages never heard before from Jackson's written manifesto, which read, "The racial world war starts today. Negroes are obviously first on the list for extermination." Jackson's attorney claims the Army veteran wasn't a racist, but snapped after returning from his service in Afghanistan.
He simply could not find direction in the world.
Jackson apologized in court. "It never should have happened," he said. "If I could do it all over again, this never would have happened." Kaufman's loved ones don't buy it.
It was for the courts. It was BS.
Kaufman's cousin read a letter to the judge describing the family's heartbreaking loss, saying, "We'll never know how much he truly suffered or how alone he felt in his last moments." Jackson's conviction is the first ever in New York State for first-degree murder as an act of terrorism. Manhattan District Attorney Cy Vance says there is no place in this city for hate.
Crimes like this will be treated with the most serious laws that we have.
Jackson's defense team plans to appeal, a process that could take 2 more years at criminal court in Lower Manhattan.
In the aftermath of Timothy's murder, Some media coverage focused on minor arrests from more than a decade earlier. Nonviolent offenses, old records, details that had nothing to do with his death. At the same time, coverage frequently mentioned Jackson's military service. That contrast raised questions. Why are victims sometimes scrutinized more than perpetrators? Why do we dissect the background of the person killed while contextualizing the life of the killer? Advocates pointed out that Timothy was more than the last act of his life. He was a son of a pastor, a former social worker, a man who loved civic engagement, an autograph collector, a New Yorker who tweeted, "I love America." This case also highlighted something larger: domestic extremism. Jackson did not operate as part of a foreign terror network. He radicalized largely online. He wrote his own manifesto. He decided on his own to carry out violence. Lone actors like this are difficult to detect, but not impossible. The ideology was visible. The writings existed. The fixation was documented. This case forced conversations about monitoring extremist bases, intervention strategies, and how hate-based rhetoric can evolve into violence. Timothy's murder was not spontaneous rage. It was planned terror.
For that reason of all reasons, because he was black.
Michael Shakur, Kaufman's neighbor at the homeless shelter, was stunned after hearing that's the reason the suspect gave police. Shakur says there's one thing he will remember about Kaufman that makes him smile.
He didn't stay still long enough. He was collecting his can.
Collecting cans and taking pictures of celebrities like Oprah Winfrey.
I can't wrap my head around why this thing is happening.
Neither can this business owner who arrived at his restaurant to a crime scene on Tuesday morning.
Thank God he's off the streets.
This case forces us to confront several uncomfortable realities. First, hate crimes can be terrorism. When violence is intended to intimidate an entire group of people, it crosses into something broader than individual assault. Second, online radicalization is not theoretical. It has consequences. It can transform resentment into mission. Third, victims deserve dignity in storytelling. Timothy Kaufman was not just a headline about a sword attack. He was a human being with history, community ties, and curiosity about the world. Fourth, extremism thrives in isolation. Community awareness, responsible reporting, and early intervention matter. No single policy eliminates hate, but silence never helps.
Because if you're supreme and you're so much superior to other people, what you do is you find the most powerless person there is and then attack them at their most vulnerable moment when they can't defend themselves. That's how people prove how supreme they are. But in their idiotic heads, that's how they think. They think, oh, I'll show him. He's got no weapon, I do. He can't defend himself, he has no power at all. Now, am I gonna go, it actually reminds me of Dylan Roof. He said, well, I mean, I really wanted to kill black people, but I didn't want to go into an inner city in his way of thinking, because that would have been dangerous. So I just shot people at a church because it's easier. But yet, in their twisted minds, they think they're really courageous.
Guys, we mustn't, I know this is gonna be difficult, but we mustn't blame all white people for this one attack. I mean, it's definitely not a part of white ideology. White supremacy isn't an inherent gene that white people have.
Timothy Kaufman spent his final moments walking toward help. That detail matters. He fought. He moved. He tried to survive. The man known as Hard Rock did not give up easily. His killer will spend the rest of his life behind bars. But Timothy's legacy should not be defined by how he died. It should be defined by how he lived. A man grounded in faith, committed to the community, engaged in civic life, living modestly but with dignity. If you believe victims deserve to be remembered as full human beings, not reduced to statistics or symbols, subscribe to Dark Trace Crime Stories. Share this episode. Keep his name alive. This is Dark Trace Crime Stories, where truth is documented and victims are never forgotten.